This is going to be a little bit of a different take on the masculine and the feminine in this experience, and it'll be based upon the idea of intention through our physiology, being that you have seed producers and seed germinators. In order to germinate the seed, you have to have the right conditions, the right nutrients, the right frequencies in order for that seed to fully blossom into what it's supposed to be. If it's lacking the nutrients, if it's lacking the conditions, that seed would become stunted or not germinate at all. When you're planting a garden, when you're growing food to nourish your body, to nourish your family, you have to have the seeds. You have to have the seeds that produce these fruits, these vegetables, that carry those minerals, that carry those nutrients. Without the seed, you do not have growth. You do not have the information that turns that seed into a plant, those plants into a farm. It is the seed that carries this information. The masculine experience is a seed producer. In those seeds is the nourishment of information, consciousness, evolution. Manipulators of this realm are aware of this relationship between the masculine and the feminine, the seeds in the garden, the soil. They are aware of the power that comes from controlling that expression, that growth. So to control that experience, our awareness, our relationship with that growth is not only stunted, but it's flipped and reversed and sold to us at a surface layer of experience. So instead of growing a part of yourself, your consciousness, through your seed production, you are convinced to channel that energy into the growth of your ego, of the money, of whatever kind of flowers this experience wants you to grow within its garden. And the women just become reproducers of the seed for the gardens of Western so-called civilization, the Western institution. Women have become replicators. So the external becomes amplified. It becomes the focus. How well you produce within the garden of Westernism, that becomes the goal with your seed production. Your seed is no longer your own. Your seed is in reference to the garden of industry. When that happens, you become completely separated from the original garden, the relationship between the masculine and the feminine. Because the feminine, the women, have been downgraded, secondary, manipulated into focusing upon the external versus the internal, which is another flipping upside down and reversing, as the feminine is the internal and the masculine is the external. So the masculine has been manipulated into money, for lack of a better term, and the feminine has been manipulated into sex, objects. This perspective is akin to someone who focuses on the destination instead of the journey, losing out on the entire experience for that one thing. The thing is what produces that drip, that dopamine drip, driving you. The thing is what drives you, rather than the time within the experience. Raising destination children at the expense of the journey, sacrificing the character, sacrificing character building, which takes time, which takes effort for the dopamine drip, seeking drips to the destination, missing the math, missing the science, missing the adventure of the experience, the consciousness within the experience, the growth, the evolution of the experience, because the vision has been flipped upside down and reversed. Sacrificing the internal, the character, for the drip, further emphasizes the surface layer of this divine experience that we inhabit, at the expense of the core intentions, the internal expansion. Kids do this with toys and electronics these days, obviously passed down by the adults, but that's because the adults also do this with toys of their own. The money, the sex, the games, focusing on the attention over the building. There's nothing to build. There's no foundations. You cannot build if you're focused only on looks, There's nothing to build if your attention is on the looks, because your looks are forever changing. Standing on knowledge and awareness is where you can build. These have been pushed out of the forefront of our experience to maintain the narrative, the control over the masses by focusing on the surface, the drip. Literally calling it drip. What you wear over who you are. Raising kids to seek this drip. Raising kids as drip. Reproducing to look a certain way. To appear a certain way. Without investing anything deeper than what is required of this shallow surface layer experience. Like fancy clothes and toys and cars. The intention is to have you raising future generations as the drip, as the clothes that you wear, hiding the disease behind the veil of this drip. Drip is to masculinity like what money is to success. It's a facade. It's confusion. It's ignorance. It's a lack of understanding. Drip is to masculinity just as sexual attractiveness is to feminine beauty. Sexual drip has been amplified at the expense of feminine beauty, at the expense of feminine power, once again emphasizing the surface to suppress the core, the foundation, emphasizing sexual control over the masculine as the norm, romanticizing it, putting it in your movies, in your music, in your belief systems, further amplifying the masculine disease, the lack of focus, the ignorance, the drip, the addiction to the drip, triggering the fullness of seed release to fill the emptiness of the world within. Empty women filling themselves with a constant supply of living seed to fill the dead space of a fruitless garden. Monsanto soils and GMO seeds, forced in so many ways to buy your seeds from their production facility. Artificial growth, virtual seed production, birthing emptiness, descendantless production, time filled with games and physical drip, focusing on how the flowers look or the strength of the production and the relationship with the soil, no longer producing fruit, producing flowers. These days, love is the ultimate drip. Physical love at the expense of functional love. Dopamine drip love over living love. Intentional love. Conditioned to produce flowers instead of fruits and vegetables. Visuals over nourishment. Pretty crystals over nourishing minerals. Over time, these flowers turn to weeds, and those weeds to barren gardens. Crops so modified at this time, they're even destroying the garden, the soil. We are the Monsanto seeds, and our lands are being bought up and manipulated by the controllers. Love between people sold today as climate change is sold to the masses. Your relationship with the experience itself. It's not full of attachments, it is the attachment. The attachment to detachment. Numbed, hollowed out, full with genetically modified emptiness. Masculine came before the system. Anything based upon the system is not masculinity. Masculine communities centered on system-based variables like money, clout, cars, and women are designed to control masses of people. No different than BLM was designed to represent black people. In this example, Western controls are the George Soros to the masculine, and groups like the Manosphere are the BLM of Masculinity. These groups are filled with ego-driven man-children who have no idea what masculinity is. They're broken men reacting to a world filled with broken women, trying to hide their broken nature behind the smoke and mirrors of success within a broken system. They're high schoolers playing elementary games with insecure children who have been told that they are adults. And as celebrities are hoisted onto a pedestal for the world to see, being as dense and as dumb as they are, online personas and communities like the manosphere are placed out there for the world to strive to be like. Any bit of confidence shining in a world of insecurity is seen as a royal stance. None of these groups reference the masculine in balance with the unbroken feminine. None of these groups reference the masculine responsibility in the life of a child. Most of these men in these groups are unaware of what the masculine role is in the raising of a child. This is because they are still children themselves. They rationalize the lack of knowledge and responsibility of what role reproduction plays in the defining of true masculinity, because they are children themselves. Chasing desire, suppressing organic masculinity for the artificial, addressing broken femininity as a politician would sell you a brighter tomorrow. This type of masculinity is the carbon copy of what the system wants people to see Republicans as in response to not just a broken Democrat, but a diseased blue man group. Choose brokenness, because at least it's not diseased. Choose masculine-ish, because at least it's not insecure. At least it's not confused about bathrooms and pronouns. The lesser of two artificials is still artificial. Place these men in front of a real woman, and they will buckle. This is why they have to surround themselves with broken women, to emphasize their illusions, selling the smoke and shining the mirrors. What responsibility do these men have to their ancestors, the land, their future generations? Nothing. The masculine that comes before this system represents the energy beyond this realm. These geeks only represent themselves. They stand for nothing outside of their limited scope. They push the gym because they are unable to push a book. They glorify sex because they are unable to see beyond their addiction to desire. These people are addicted to the disease, addicted to the illusion, addicted to the distraction, the embodiment of insecurity. Too insecure to even entertain the idea of evolving out of the child mind. These imposters can't see the connection that masculinity has to the fatherhood algorithm because they are emotionally and consciously stunted. As a child will shy away from the question of having children, they are in many ways incapable of even entertaining that idea because their brains and experience has not fully developed. The system has been designed to produce stunted, underdeveloped adults, so that the insecurity buried deep beneath their idea of success will go unnoticed and unresolved, leaving them to not only be completely dependent on the broken world provided to them, but even glorifying that world. The manosphere concept is the Planned Parenthood for masculinity, an industry plant, locking people further and further into their own trap, the artificial self-trap. They sold love because you can't sell authenticity. Love is ambiguous. Love can be anything. Authenticity can only be one thing, nothing more, nothing less. Love is indirect. Authenticity is sharp. Love is religious. Authenticity is spiritual. The love movement was the BLM for humanity. The authenticity movement produces justice. The love movement produced illusion. Love is the ego to the spirit of authenticity. Love is the public school system to the knowledge and wisdom of authenticity. Love without authenticity is a pre-recorded screening of a live event. Authenticity stands alone and needs no support. Love can be defined by the lowest common denominator. Authenticity cannot be divided. The atoms of authenticity cannot be split. They transcend this experience. Love can be shaped and molded for effect. Authenticity is solid, unmonetizable. Authenticity doesn't wage war. It doesn't need to fight. Religious love has been the cause of the most bloodshed. Authenticity is the direct connection, the hard line to reality, attached only to itself, while the tentacles of love require a host. Love has its purpose, while authenticity is the purpose. Love is only the opposite of fear in that they are both emotion-driven. Authenticity is not concerned with emotion. The peaks of love require authenticity. Authenticity does not require love. Authenticity is not challenged by fear, nor is it even in the same ballpark. The authentic one stands beyond the realm, transcending fear. The loving one is defined by the realm. At best, romanticizing love to transcend this space. Spiraling in the vastness of nothing, love will forever eat its own tail, while authenticity stands firm in its detachment from attachment. Love is troubled by chaos, while authenticity is unbothered. Authenticity is trained for chaos. Love is reactive to chaos. Authentic magic stems from a higher realm than love magic. Love magic is the eyes, while the authentic magic is the being. At best, love is the art of reproduction, while authenticity is the spark of that reproduction. The body compared to its life force. The shell versus the being. In the movie versus writing the script. This is why they push love over authenticity, belief over truth, and success over justice. Love sets the foundation for codependency and emotion-based experience. Reactivity versus proactivity. Love of country versus the authentic awareness of our relationship with the land. Words versus action. Authenticity is alive. Love is variable. An equation versus the math itself. Celebrities are the embodiment of inauthenticity. They specialize in selling love and artificial authenticity. This is why they are hoisted into the ethers of fame. Untouchable. Unquestionable. This is why black love is pushed so hard instead of national authenticity. Black love is the combination of two illusions, at least 2 degrees separated from the authentic self, lost in love with an illusion. Black has no connection with your ancestors, and love has no connection with authenticity. So they push black love through black history and black power. But don't get too crazy and start generating a black economy. That is because black authenticity will be the outcome of that venture, and people will eventually work their way back to authenticity, beyond the veil of black illusions. White supremacy loves love. Without love, how could they rationalize genocide and stealing the land? How could they sleep at night without the love of their God gifting them with such a beautiful destiny manifested from the love of God Himself? God loves them more than those they continue to subjugate. This is why these people have the most trouble with authenticity. Their supremacy is artificial authenticity, and the lies they have to maintain stand in the way of even the slightest forms of authenticity. This criminal lack of authenticity is displayed daily by your newscasters, casting spells of disingenuous realness wrapped in genetically modified authenticity. This demographic is in love with anti-authenticity. They have to be. If the pillars of authenticity become unveiled, the towers of love will come crumbling down. This can't happen. So they remain silent, pleading the fifth, hoping the case of worldwide injustices will get thrown out. Playing on your heartstrings, banking on your love. Because when you break free of that spell, there's no going back. You can't put authenticity back in that box. Authenticity eats its way out of that shell, revealing nothing but itself. Love between the parent and the child is the closest to the vibration of authenticity that love can ever get. Love is just the fuel to the vehicle of authenticity that parents are using to raise these children into the world. And the plan is to not keep love out of the equation, like they say, fear versus love. It's really to keep authentic beings out of the equation. The they are not threatened by love. They just want you to think that they are threatened by love. Authenticity is actually what holds deception accountable, not love. Love is the civil rights movement to the authentic revolution. There's a depopulation program because new beings are closer to who they truly are. And yes, they don't want you to have kids, but why don't they want you to have kids? Is it because they think overpopulation is damaging the earth and they care about nature? No. It's because, like people who have broken out of the illusions, children are born with the eyes that can see the world through the filter of authenticity, through the bullshit. And the schools are designed to catch kids at the beginning of the high velocity growth phase in order to lock them into a growth pattern of anti-authenticity. Once they start there and are surrounded by peers who do the same thing, like a drug addict, it's hard to break that pattern. Parents then reinforce these patterns and even punish those who deviate from the anti-authentic algorithm. This is then maintained and inflamed until they are adults. And at that point, they are now trained to pass that control grid on to the next generation. And like the growth factor of kindergarten age children, 18-year-olds are at another peak of growth, which is then dampened by the world of Western adulthood. And the best case scenario is to lock these adult children into reproduction so that they have so much of a difficult time with raising of a child. They can't wait to put their kids into the system of indoctrination because they are thirsting for adult-level toys and games, perpetuating the addiction even further into both generations, and even carrying over into the elder generation because a lot of the time the grandparents are having to close the gaps between their children and the grandchildren. 3 generations locked down as the norm. What then gets lost in all of the chaos is the authenticity and even the baseline levels of love that is needed to set the foundation for authentic and healthy growth, normalizing sick and diseased children and adults. This is how they can hide depopulation under the guilt complex of overpopulation, which also maintains the idea of the systems of control being the parental figures over a world of broken children. They have the answers to the problems of the world, all while censoring the perspectives of the authentic ones and the wisdom keepers who share the information that holds them and their systems accountable for their hands in the causing of these problems. This is why authenticity is more powerful than love. Love doesn't think to seek justice. Authenticity can't be what it is without justice. Love has been artificially beefed up to appear to be a threat on purpose, a controlled opposition, meant to look powerful, but designed to only go so far and eventually fail at the most optimal time that both holds up the illusion of strength and also allows the systems to win the fixed fight against the misinformed. So they don't want you to not have kids. They just don't want you to have kids raised with the consciousness of authenticity. They actually need you to have kids to keep their systems running. They need you to birth their kids. Kids that will be raised under the same umbrella of anti-authenticity with the bonus of also not having even the most basic levels of love. They do this by replacing the idea of love with games, toys, social media, busyness, technology, dopamine, and chaos, to name a few. So imagine testing a child on college level courses, but they've never had elementary or high school level training. No love and no authenticity, floating in a universe of chaos with only the comfort of their indoctrination to guide them through the world. I used to be a proponent for not bringing kids into this sick world, but that sentiment never sat right with me. It always felt like the exact thing the system wants people to think like. Another form of depopulation. Besides that, after now having the experience of bringing a child into this world, now I know that the mindset of the sick world will block all those who fall into that mindset from experiencing authentic love and the depths of authenticity. After myself experiencing and even redefining authentic love, I can't really imagine this experience without that realization. All definitions of love before having a child crumble away like dust. They don't exist. It's 1,000 times more extreme than the difference between love and lust. That chasm between those two definitions, times 1,000, still can't really define what that love between the parent and the child really is. It's undefinable. Romantic love is definable. And when you can define it in that finite state, you can sell it. This is why romanticism type love is what's sold to the world, mostly through the mainstream, as the end-all be-all love. And in that definition, the relationship between the parent and the child gets lost because it just gets balled up into all the other versions of what they say love is, but is actually a planted definition of love as a weapon for one to take away the function of love between the parent and the child. In extreme cases, the love between the parent and their partner, in many cases in this sick-ass world, can overtake the love relationship between a parent and a child. Especially when you have a relationship between two codependents, two narcissists who are only focused on manipulating the relationship for their own benefit. They're so consumed by themselves and each other that the children are just a part of that equation. And in many ways, a part of destroying that equation because they put themselves before their future generations. This is also the intention of the controllers, because that relationship is the extreme version of separating the parent from the child, which creates more disease, more sickness, more codependency for not only them, but the future generations. Creating that brokenness, creating that separation from that which is natural so that they will attach themselves to the artificial. And the more you attach yourself to the artificial, the easier it is for you to be controlled. The more you'll want to be controlled in that codependent relationship. This is how the system becomes the parent to the masses. They become your mother. They become your father. And what gets lost in all of these relationships is the function, the reality of love underneath the mainstream broken versions and definitions of love pumped out through romanticism, which sets the foundation for authentic beings. A big part of expressing that authenticity is to know oneself. And if you're too consumed with sickness and disease and codependency, you're so enveloped with just surviving, just getting by, that you don't have time or the wherewithal to ever know yourself, which is at the foundation of true authenticity. So in order to comfort ourselves, we lock ourselves into that mainstream definition of love, which is romanticism, or in many cases, just lust. Locking yourselves into that frequency just to get by, just to have something that feels real. And a lot of the times people are seeking that love in other people from outside sources, even from drugs, from success, from things, from attention. They're seeking that because they never had that foundation from their own parents, because their parents never had that, and so on and so forth. Adding to generations upon generations of anti-authentic beings, rationalizing artificiality as the real, at the expense of authenticity. No less than 3 degrees of separation from ever being a threat to the systems who created these control measures. This is how, like in the Matrix, you are birthing batteries for this system, because your children are not your own. And the people who are of the biggest threat to these systems are attacked even further, literally installing drugs and guns into the community, redlining people into communities of self-destruction, food deserts, poisoned water, toxins leaking into the waters, into the air, from the pollution from the industries that these houses are built around. There is a definite focus on a particular type of people. This is where the system of racism and white supremacy fits into this discussion. It's not a clear observation across the board. Oh, we're all being attacked. No, that's the oversimplification of what's really going on here. And largely that comes about from people who are dealing with the guilt complex. They don't know how to deal with that situation. And people who are largely uninformed because this is not their experience. So all they have to do is to emotionally regurgitate onto you as if your experience and your take on this situation is actually adding to the problems of the world. This is why they say when you talk about systems of racism and white supremacy, to generate an understanding, to help people heal from that situation, just the very act of discussing this feels like an attack to them because of that guilt complex. And the only way that they can rationalize your feeling that way and speaking that way is to then lump you in with all the other problems created by the system. You are now a problem no different than the systems that create these problems. And you need to be dismissed, deflected from, or demonized. And once again, that perspective comes from a lack of understanding of themselves. Your seeking to understand the depths of yourself is a threat to people who lock themselves into the illusions, the belief systems that make them feel good, that make them feel loved, that make them feel authentic. So-called white people in this country have very observable problems with genuine love and genuine authenticity. They are just as separated from their ideas of themselves as we are. At least we're still on our own land. Their history has moved them from another location. They have to be in a deeper illusion than we are, because at least we have the direct connection. We still walk around with the fibers of our being tying into the land of which we live. Not only are they separated from their story, but they have the illusory stories that they have to propagate and add on to as the artificial foundation of their anti-authentic reality. We don't have to deal with that guilt complex. We have to deal with other forms, other types of complexes, which are just as effective in keeping you away from your authentic self, in keeping you away from loving yourself, but not as heavy when you're directly connected to a storyline of beings and systems that are still alive and well and very much directly connected to the psychological and spiritual enslavement of masses of people around the world. This is why there is such a push to lock you into a relationship, a deep, loving, authentic relationship with technology, to close the gaps of that organic authenticity, of that organic love, and create the foundation for the next steps. What comes after you've hollowed out everybody so much that they are not only lost from who they truly are, but they are salivating at the mouth for you to tell them who they are, for you to instruct them on who they are supposed to be. You are supposed to be merging with technology. You are supposed to be putting things into your body that we say are beneficial to your experience. You are supposed to be raising your children in this way. You are supposed to be relating to this experience the way we tell you to. This is how the world is rewriting the code of your reality. There are only two real loves in the world. The rest is lust, friendships, and romanticism. Why this is true is because if you can love everything, then love is nothing. Our reality is shaped by our language. If love is watered down by the language and the culture into nothing, then you really don't experience love at all. Especially when it's used to sell everything from burgers to toilet paper. The majority of what we say is not love. Love is the original woke. It's a tool packaged to sell a product. The product I'm saying it's used to sell is control. By inflating love so much, it has been reduced to nothing, with the intention to enforce control by creating codependent, loveless automatons who are themselves inflated by the artificial ideas of love. This is why you have these days people equating the love of a dog to the love of a child. The feeling that you have for your dog is not love, and that's okay. The feeling that you have for your friend is not love, and that's okay. The feeling that you have for your significant other is not love, and that's okay. We are not experiencing love in these examples. This is indoctrination. This is what the English language is designed to do. This is what the education system is designed to do. I had a teacher just today try to enforce upon me that the definition of a leader requires kindness. In what world does leadership require a leader to be kind? So with my background, of course, I rattled off the Army's actual definition of what leadership means, which triggered this man to literally say that he was empowered by the state of California to define what we are to believe, and because of that, kindness is leadership. This is how far these belief systems go. Into the realms of a supposed higher learning institution. But it starts with the language. Kindness is not leadership because a community college professor says it is. But the authority he so confidently flexed on me in the class says it is. You are to stay in your place and shut your mouth. Leadership is kindness. So stay in your place and shut your mouth. We define your reality because the authority of the colonial world has said so. And just as in the example for leadership, this system of control has deemed that love is everything. And to question that is absurd. Love is actually the framework to innovation in the example that we are living within this idea, this religion of innovation. You are supposed to love, believe, and celebrate the Western world and its innovation-based achievements because the human family loves each other more today than it used to. The amount of human love around the world is at an all-time high. Never in history has humanity loved as much as we do today. We love so much, we have loving relationships with animals. We have too much love. Dogs and cats being a part of our family is a proof that Western civilization is the peak of human evolution. We have unified not only the human world, but we have unified and even protect the animal kingdom. Never in any part of the human timeline have we ever achieved so much and been so concerned with the world as we are today. This is why you should not only blindly follow and defend our system, but you should also love our system. Meanwhile, your definition of love, like money, is being severely inflated in order to appear wealthy and ambivalent. We have so much love for the world, we will bomb them into oblivion for their own good. The world is being literally love-bombed by Western ideals. And this love isn't love, it's romanticism. Romanticizing the idea of Western evolution, an extension of the Roman Empire. So what is love? Does it even exist? I say it does. Just as we know water is wet, love is tangible. But where is the line drawn? From wet to dry, there's damp and moist. Is it still wet? Kinda, yeah. But compared to wet, damp and moist aren't wet. It's just not dry. Damp and moist are just as close to not dry as they are to being wet. So wet is wet. So what is love? Not damp love or moist love. What is love? Love. Well, what is damp love? Besides all that, can we see that we have more words for various levels of moisture content than we do for something as meaningful as love? This is the problem I'm hoping to expose. There is a purpose behind this. There is a purpose behind why you have more words explaining various moisture levels compared to various levels of love. There is a purpose behind this. And I'm saying that the purpose is to inflate the idea of love so much it no longer has a meaning or purpose. And this is a problem for what I'm saying is the function of love. To help grow a living and intelligent presence, a protection, a reliance, a stepping stone, a foundation builder, a character base, a motivator, a disciplinary, a safe zone. For a child to grow with an optimal trajectory, these factors need to be present. Without these elements present, that child will lose something. The present parent sees it as a healthy responsibility, while the child experiences it as love. And what the child gives back to you when you provide them with these key factors is love in its purest form. They grow to appreciate everything you bring to them, and they love you for that. That is real love. And when they grow, and that love for you grows with them, your inner child grows with them, and that part of you reactivates, leaving just the purity of that child's love for you and the purity of your inner child guiding and loving that child into a deeper love for himself and the generations after him. This is the function and, in my humble opinion, the only real expression of true love. Innocent love. Egoless love. That which exists before the illusions get too thick to see through. The second real love is the love between siblings. And this is basically a mirror of the original love. This is because, for one, they are growing and evolving in the pre-ego creation phase. And two, many siblings also take on the role as parents themselves. And they get to experience all that comes with that responsibility. They get to experience that parental relationship with the child. And this love is just as thick and can be in many ways more impactful than the relationship that even the parents have with their kids. In these examples, love is about growth. The function is growth. In romantic relationships, you have growth, but it's not the same in that you are already developed. You're a developed being, and hopefully aren't looking to get into a relationship to grow. You should be growing on your own, and not leaning on a relationship to do that. If growth happens in a relationship, it should be fluid and natural, not part of a contract. And sometimes that growth isn't even present in relationships. So that means that growth, that function, is optional. And for love to be love, it can't be optional. A child's love for their parent is not optional. It's real until there's no place left for it to go. So after analyzing what we thought was love between significant others and now seeing that it is in fact not love, all the other things we thought we loved fall into the same category. Love for your pet is now laughable. Love for an object is absurd. Love for a god is one-sided and is also, again, not egoless. And love for a culture or country is pure ego. So back to the language, as other languages have so many different words for different experiences, we need to evolve our language to define these things we used to refer to as love. In doing that, our relationships will become stronger, more understanding, less abstract, less emotional, and more meaningful. Something that I forgot in the last video, but I have mentioned before, was the biological shift that happens to the father's experience upon having a child. I imagine women have this happen to them in a similar fashion, but women are already built and programmed to be what that baby needs. Men, on the other hand, are initially programmed to seed spread, so it's somewhat of a more intense shift to experience. Of course, this is occurring with both men and women who aren't completely overrun with the world and don't have their senses burnt out from overstimulation. In particular, the man's biology shifts from a singular focus to a more collaborative one. The new father's main source of dopamine no longer comes from singular stimulants like sex, chasing women, games, or most of the dopamine-inducing experiences that exist before having a child. His dopamine and sense of fulfillment now comes from providing for his family, and more specifically his child. The smile of his child does something to his biology and his sense of self that nothing ever came close to doing. The depth of that connection transcends anything that came before it. Previous methods of joy and happiness inducing experiences all seem trivial and dry, empty, commercial, and just overall different. The receiver is different. The experience is different. The relationship with the experience is different. Meaning changes everything. Purpose becomes real. More real than any other preconceived notion of real. Very similar and equivalent to the love shift that happens upon having a child. Love and experience itself elevates. Once again, this is relative and dependent upon the nature of the receiver. If the individual is still moment-to-moment conditioning himself to seek that drip elsewhere, that new father can and will reprogram himself to revert back to the old ways of being. Unfortunately, this can also happen with women. Women who never allow themselves to open up to that space of motherhood, trying to grasp onto a reality that is more focused on their ego. Or in other cases, like I said in the last video, more focused on their partner at the expense of the child. An obvious example of the reprogramming is when men have a bunch of kids and never tap into that idea of being a father whatsoever. Biologically, psychologically, spiritually, they are still closed off because at the heart of every experience, you are still at the helm. You are choosing what experience best suits you in that moment. Someone in this state of mind could have 10, 15, 20 kids, and they'll still never be a father. These are sperm donors enslaved by their own desires, some even priding themselves in this behavior. This is then reinforced by the society who is itself burnt out and reproducing for the sake of desire, the desire to control, the desire to maintain that ignorance, the desire that maintains that codependency, which produces the batteries for the control grid. This is why you are overstimulated, oversexualized, and underinformed with all of these experiences. The experience of love, the experience of reproducing, and everything in and around that. All of it's commercial, all of it's romanticized, with a purpose to keep people in that state of chaos, to keep people in that state of stagnant. No movement, no awareness, no growth, no evolving. Stay in that child state of mind because that state of being is easily controlled. It's based upon emotions. And the kicker to this is that people will not only be completely separated from their future generations, but they will grow to defend this world. This is psychological, psycho-spiritual cannibalism. Eating the spiritual flesh of your future generations for the sake of your own selfish experience.